Did you ever think of it that death has generally a double effect? Maybe it is better to say this way, that God uses it both for destruction and construction. If both builds up and it tears down. The words of the Lord Jesus previously referred to, John 12:24, show it, and observation confirms it. On close analysis, I doubt that any death of individuals, beasts, birds, plants, etc., cannot be shown to have these two elements in them. The difference lies in the quality of what is torn down or built up. Either something good or something bad is built up or torn down. If we look on death as a general force, it is easier to see that death always accomplishes something good, something which God has desired. We may not be able to see just what, but we know that as there was not any evil that came in contrary to God's intention, all is for ultimate good. That is the constructive part of the effect of death. Precious in the sight of Jehovah is the death of his saints. Psalm 116:15. Why? Because it accomplishes his purpose with them. For one thing, they are through with their trials and afflictions and are in his safekeeping. When God exalteth death to the place of a monarch, Romans 5:14, it was for the purpose of accomplishing something of value, although death is temporarily an enemy of man. The value of its ministry may not be apprehended by many before the day dawns and the shadows flee away, but then it will be seen. Perhaps if we think of certain definite phases of death, we can see this clearer. Take, for instance, the process that Paul had in mind when he said in 2 Corinthians 4:11, we who live the God life are always delivered unto death for Jesus' sake, that the life also of Jesus may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So then, death worketh in us, but life in you. He also says, I die daily. This was a dying from sin. The process diminished the carnal tendencies and built up the spiritual qualities. On the other hand, when a person goes the ways of sin, the process is reversed. The good is torn down, the bad is built up. Death may counteract the flesh, or it may support it and increase its activities. Adamic death has built up in the race weakness, sickness, infirmities, and inability to do what is right. Death passed through into all mankind, on which all sinned, Romans 5:12. Death tore down the ability to resist sin and built up the desire and ability to serve unrighteousness. But in the saints, this has been reversed. In them, God uses death to counteract the tendency to sin and develop ability to live godly and righteously in this evil age. In this age and up till the time when the Lord has established his kingdom on earth and imparted an increased amount of life to the race, the effect of death will be predominantly on the side of destruction. But from there on, death will be used more and more for construction, to counteract evil in man, and shall we say, kill off evil to make room for good. When we come to the administration of the fullness of eons, Ephesians 1:9-10, on the new earth, then the destructiveness of death shall be greatly curbed. Its action shall be limited to the lake of fire, and destructive death shall be held in check by the leaves of the tree of life, which is to be there for the healing of the nations, Revelation 22:2. It seems to me that what marks off the second death and puts it in a class by itself primarily is its character. The fact that it comes as second in Revelation to what is before seems to be a minor consideration. The first death degraded man morally and physically. The second death will improve man in every way. Now, this is radically off compared to the ordinary conception, but we shall aim in the following pages to show from the scriptures that this view can be better sustained than the view that presents the second death as literal and physical. That the second death is not just a repetition of the first is also clearly seen by the fact that the first is cast into the second. As the second is likened to a lake, it must mean that the first is submerged in it, done away with, or destroyed. If it was said, for instance, that they were joined, added, combined, or something to that effect, we should have all reason to believe that they were common in action and effect. But when the one is cast into the other, it precludes most effectively the idea that they are one in purpose and action. What is then the purpose, action, and effect of the lake of fire? And death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. Revelation 20:14. We have shown before that fire is used in the scriptures before the book of Revelation far oftener in a symbolic than in a literal sense. As this book is more highly symbolic than any other book in the Bible, it would be unreasonable to expect that this would be reversed, that we would find here more literalness than elsewhere in the scriptures. Rather, must we expect that symbolism has been intensified. We have also called attention to the unreasonableness of God using such hard means of execution on those who have been brought in line with his will through judgment. That literal interpretation of the lake of fire is unacceptable. We shall now give more evidence. The two words fire and brimstone, or sulfur, demand some special attention. I quote from Dr. Pridgeon's book, Is Hell Eternal? The lake of fire and brimstone signifies a fire burning with brimstone. The word brimstone or sulfur defines the character of the fire. The word theon, T-H-E-I-O-N, translated brimstone, is exactly the same word theon, which means divine. Sulfur was sacred to the deity among the ancient Greeks and was used to fumigate, to purify, and to cleanse, and to consecrate to the deity. For this purpose, they burned it in their incense. In Homer's Iliad, one is spoken of as purifying a goblet with fire and brimstone. The verb derived from theo is theou, T-H-E-I-O-O, which means to hallow, to make divine, or to dedicate to a god. To any Greek or to any trained in the Greek language, a lake of fire and brimstone would mean a lake of divine purification. Another angle. How is a person dead in trespasses and sins, Ephesians 2, awakened to his condition? By the Spirit of God, divine life beginning to exert itself in his behalf, of course. This is the initial steps toward the counteraction of death in him. The second great step is when he, after having been convicted of sin, of righteousness, and of judgment, John 16, turns to Christ and accepts him for his salvation, life, and peace. Right then is inaugurated a lifelong campaign against death in him. This is a reversal of his former condition, and it is a reversal of the action of death in him. Up to this time, he has been dead and dying to God, and no righteousness, and to righteousness. Now he begins to die to sin and self. Is it not clear that this is the second death he is passing through? It is also clear that this death does not have an equally strong grip on each individual. Some are born with dying almost accomplished in them. Some are born strong and healthy, more life. So it also seems to be in the spiritual. Some are degenerating faster, morally and spiritually, some slower. It is the same character and essence in all, but the degree in which it is manifest is different. In other words, the action of death, whether the first or the second, manifests itself in varying degrees. Adamic death militates against spiritual life, and if not stopped, kills it. Divine life is death to the Adamic death. Death is swallowed up in life. Jesus said, I am the life. Let us see how this life is gradually overcoming Adamic death, according to a specific divine program outlined for us in the scriptures. After the death and resurrection of Christ, there was an infusion of divine life into the race as never before. By this infusion, millions have had death in them overcome, but only comparatively few, compared with the race as a whole, have received this life experience, this dying of death in them. At the coming of the Lord, he shall undertake to inject this life stream into dead Israel first. It shall be as life from the dead. Romans 11, Zechariah 12, 7 and 8, etc. Then shall the restored Israel be used as a life channel to the residue of men, Acts 15, 17, and there shall be an awakening such as never before in history. A mighty campaign by life against death, an increased dying of the Adamic death by injection of life. Then shall the days of the righteous be as the days of the tree, hundreds of years. Isaiah 64, 19 through 25. But even then death shall stalk the earth. But when we come to the new earth, Revelation 20 and 21, we find that there shall be no more death. To that extent has divine life, Jesus Christ, counteracted death, that no one shall die on earth through that long administration. But death is still in existence. What death? The first, the death inherited through Adam? No, that has been cast into the second death. And what did we find was the second death? The death that operates to the destruction of Adamic death. The second death consists of divine life. May the Spirit of God help you to apprehend this. We have shown it all through this paper. The fire counteracting sin and ungodliness was God in action. When Paul said we die daily, it is clear that it was the divine life that operated in him and caused death from all that was of the flesh.